What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online Podcast. Nick and Zach coming to you live from Spurs Gridiron Grill. And it is Florida-Georgia week, not Georgia-Florida week.
It's just
we follow the alphabet.
It's just alphabet. That's all it is.
I mean,
it sounds so weird to hear them say Georgia, Florida.
And they all do it. And by they all, I mean you Georgia people.
And then they bark.
They bark. And they try to move the game from Jacksonville in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party.
But Kirby gets his way, sort of.
Usually, lately, he's been getting his way.
Yeah.
He didn't get his way with keeping Katie Turner on staff.
He doesn't get his way at the barbershop either.
Ooh, Nick's coming in hot, ladies and gentlemen.
It's just obvious.
Yeah. So we'll see as Kirby Smart faces off against first-year Florida coach Billy Nape here and his staff. A lot of Georgia ties there, a lot of familiar faces, folks that work together at Alabama. Mutual respect, I think, on both sides. A lot different than
which wasn't there the previous couple of years with Dan Mullen and Kirby.
No, there was some bad blood, some different recruiting philosophies, let's just say.
Yeah, one recruited.
Yeah. And the Gators are recruiting very well right now.
Sure
for
are.
the 2023 class as we come to you today on Cormani McLean Day, as we will definitely get into his commitment in the last segment. And we will also be joined today by Palmer Thombs from Dogs headquarters to give you guys some perspective on the nation's #1 team, what we've seen from the defending national champions this year, and where they've maybe slipped up in some areas that Florida will try to take advantage of on Saturday. But, Nick, we got to start with.
You think the coaches slipped up on the depth chart?
Oh, no, they didn't slip up. They didn't slip up.
Before he goes off, because it feels like he's about to. No changes on the defense. After a week, the bye to assess, work on yourself.
Personnel potential changes.
No changes on defense, which is the worst third down defense in the country. Like, name a team. San Jose State, better. Colorado.
And they've been bad in near the worst in other categories.
UMass, better.
So, look, this is just my theory.
Okay.
Now, some of this is not theory. Some of this is what the kids call sauces. But I will say, Nicholas, in your time covering Florida football, how often has the head coach released updated depth charts throughout the course of the season weekly?
I think frequently. Mac did it.
But with changes,
they're normally not worth the paper that they're printing on.
I think Billy, to his credit, has been more intentional in his depth chart release. I think that he is he knows the value of it. He recognizes that people care. And I think that when they've made changes, it's been made noticeable, and he's discussed it. Case in point, Justice Boone.
The mistake leaving Dwan Black off the depth chart when he was supposed to be on it blew up. They had to resend it out.
And then, the change at the running back position and how fans were just clamoring for that. And after halfway through the season, there it is.
That wasn't just a depth chart change. That was
complete order.
On the field, Naquan didn't get a carry against LSU.
So what I'm trying to say is I think he's been very proactive in being upfront about the changes that are coming that week. I mean, even the week leading up to the LSU game, he had Torrance on there as questionable and said, hey, I'm just trying to be honest with you guys. And then he didn't play. But I think that Nape and his army have also recognized, I think, how much attention has been put on those depth charts.
And if you make a change, it becomes headline news.
Not just on our site at Gators Online, but on other sites, it becomes a topic for Gators Twitter. It becomes a conversation on all the, great UF podcasts that we have on this market. And it is a talking point. And again, yes, there's been depth charts that have been released every week under previous regimes, but there usually hasn't been much significant changes made. And if there are changes made, they've done so quietly. They don't draw attention to it,
But even a no change, just tweeting the story out, thousands of impressions, hundreds of responses.
So I think that Billy came in with, the approach that he was going to probably do what he did at Louisiana, which is put out an updated depth chart every week. And if there were changes and guys earned jobs or guys were getting benched, put it on there, put it out there, be upfront about it. But I think the attention that kind of transparency got at Louisiana is a lot different at the University of Florida.
And he even said that to a question, I think, LSU week. A lot more eyes on us here.
A lot more eyes. And I'm just, from what I've been told by multiple sources, I do not believe that this coaching staff went through the entire bye week and then game prep for Georgia and has made no personnel changes on defense. That has not happened.
Do you think you might start the game and then you're not playing starter reps?
Now, is the lineup that they put out there Wednesday night going to be the lineup that takes the field for the first snap Saturday? Potentially. Are the rotations going to be different at potentially, from what I've been told, 3 positions? Yes.
Not punter, right?
No, that's okay.
Thank God.
All right.
He doesn't punt anyway.
Well, when he does.
I'm in hell.
But I think that, and this is just my theory, Billy comes out Monday, first time we've talked to him since the bye week. He probably got asked 2 or 3 questions about the depth chart, asked about personnel changes, asked about how much they make a difference coming off a bye week. He got hammered about it a lot. I think starting to recognize people want to know about this.
Someone hit him with, you have the chance to be historically bad on defense at Florida.
What changes did you make? And then he comes into Wednesday, gets on the teleconference, and the first question that he gets asked, because he didn't do media Wednesday night, is, are you going to make any depth chart changes? Right out of the gate, first question on the teleconference. And to me, if he already was thinking about maybe not revealing changes on the depth chart this week, that probably confirmed it for him. I just think that from all the attention that these depth chart releases have gotten, and let's be honest, some of the fan reaction to some of these players that have that fans have been calling to be benched or demoted, and knowing the type of reaction that's going to get off of some of these depth chart releases, I think that this week he just decided, you know what? Whatever we are doing, we're just going to keep that defensive side status quo. We're not going to reveal anything to the media. We're not going to reveal anything to the fans. And probably most importantly, if we're going to keep things close to the vest, this is the week to do it against the nation's #1 team.
So sum up your conspiracy theory.
Yes, please.
You think the depth chart that we got Wednesday will not be reflected on the field Saturday?
And in the number of snaps that are played.
Not saying they won't start the game.
Yeah.
But the way the snaps are going, like trading Rashad Torrance get 60.
I think there's going to be a difference at least 2 and potentially 3 levels, all 3 levels of the defense in terms of the rotation at certain positions. There's one very obvious guy that is been getting more first team reps and asked Billy about him myself on the teleconference, and Billy said, you know what, if we were giving out an award for practice the past 2 weeks, Kamari Wilson would have gotten one.
Well, they did give out spring awards.
They did. So, but I think any other changes that you might reveal, certainly any schematic changes that might happen, they're not going to put that to me on the depth chart the week before the Georgia game or days before the Georgia game? Why give that staff the Thursday to go watch a bunch of tape of the new guys that you've moved up in the lineup and see what Tony and the staff ran with them, what they did well, what they didn't do well, how they could potentially attack those players? I mean, why give that away? I think that this week they decided not to.
Do you think any of it is protecting the actual players? Because then they have to go on social media and see it.
And I think that, I think that as well. The most obvious example for the fans that want to see a change at safety, why feed into that and then allow that player to then just get a bunch of stuff on Wednesday night via social media? Just let it happen on Saturday in the game. And at that point, whatever lineup changes play out on the field, it's secondary to that game.
When Florida wins on Saturday, no one's going to care who started.
Or when they lose, regardless, afterwards, that's a non-story. He's getting asked about the game first. The lineup changes might be brought up, but I just think Billy was trying to play a little chess this week. Maybe not only with the depth chart release, but the fact that he conveniently decided, you know what, we're not going to have a press conference this week on Wednesday after practice. Now that had been planned, but maybe there's a reason why it's been planned this week. I'm just throwing out conspiracy theories. I watched a UFO documentary a couple days ago.
Ancient aliens on the History Channel.
I saw a good one on Showtime.
Okay,
so
it's good. Tinfoil hat Zach.
Yeah, it's going to be Showtime in Jacksonville on Saturday. We'll see what defensive personnel and potential schematic changes the Gators roll out. We know what we're going to get from the offensive side. That some oars that appeared on this week's depth chart, but not much changes there.
Not much. You get Osiris Torrance back, but I thought Richie Leonard played well.
Yeah,
backing him up. But Osiris Torrance might get a brick this year, so
you needed him.
He's been the best player on the offense, not the offensive line, on the offense.
Yeah, and that was the biggest in terms of personnel or depth chart on the offensive side. Nothing more important than getting Torrance back, and he'll be available on Saturday. So we're going to jump to this first break. When we come back on the other side, we'll be joined by Palmer Thombs from Dogs headquarters of On3 to give you guys some perspective on UGA and what they're bringing to the table on Saturday. We'll be right back after this break.
Coming game against Vandy. You don't have to call or email. Just go to spurriers.com, hit the reservation button, pick a date, number of guests, and a time. It's so simple, I can do it. In fact, I just did. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Welcome back into the Gators Online Podcast. We're now joined by our guest of the week, Palmer Thombs from Dogs headquarters and On3. Palmer, thanks for joining us this week, man. How's it going?
Happy to be joining y'all. Excited to be making the trip south down to Jacksonville here before too long. Headed out of Athens tomorrow, making the trek and a little bit longer than y'all have, but certainly excited to do so. And it's a game that it's a trip that Georgia fans do love making.
Although we don't know how much longer they're going to be making it.
Let's start there. A weird joint statement. Probably the only thing Florida and Georgia have ever done together.
And agreed on.
They don't agree on how many times they've played. They don't agree on Georgia, Florida, Florida, Georgia. I think that might be it.
They don't like each other.
What's your opinion? What do you think about Jacksonville? Would you want to do a 4-year split? Atlanta, Jax, Gainesville, Athens?
Stay avoid Atlanta.
I would avoid Atlanta too. I try to avoid Atlanta at all costs, whether that be for football games or
Nashville.
You're covering. Oh, I would love that. You're covering the wrong team if you don't like Atlanta.
No, I mean, I don't think Atlanta should be a part of this series. I do like that idea of keeping Jacksonville involved, but also making it a home and home. But realistically, I don't know that you're ever going to see a perfect solution there with Jacksonville involved. I think that both of these coaches, Kirby Smart especially, but also Billy Napier coming in and getting his footing there, they are both very recruiting minded coaches. They both come from that Saban tree, and recruiting is at the forefront of their minds always. Everything it has something to do with recruiting. Haven't always been able to say that about Florida coaches.
There were seasons. There were seasons last year, and it wasn't recruiting.
There's recruiting season. There's football season. Yeah. They don't overlap. No, but I think that we are certainly trending, like you said, Nick. It's certainly a weird statement, the joint statement that got put out on Monday this week. The timing of it. It's always been a discussion. The location of this game is something that comes up. SEC media days this week, in the off season, it's whenever you need something to talk about, there's always the location of this rivalry game. And, I do think that we probably will see it at a home and home here before too long. I have not been able to cover any sporting events in Jacksonville, or excuse me, in Gainesville. And certainly, Nick, like we talked about, I'd have to change professions to change jobs to be covering a game at the Swamp, because at this point, at this rate, Georgia's not playing there anytime soon. So we'd have to see something crazy happen. I do think that we will see it here before too long. I think that it's on the agenda of these coaches, especially Kirby Smart, to get it to a home and home. Because recruiting, like I said, recruiting is such a big topic, and you're not going to see recruiting be a big part of it in Jacksonville. I mean, I think in an ideal world, you could have the game played in Jacksonville and be able to host and contact and talk to recruits there in Jacksonville, but that would require NCAA legislation change, and you're not going to get other parties on board other than maybe Texas and Oklahoma.
I thought Georgia could give tickets, could have recruits this week.
So they can give tickets, but they cannot.
Not like a visit that they would have for a home game.
Right. They can give tickets, but that's all that they can do. They are going to give tickets out to some kids, some prospective athletes here, but the coaches cannot interact with them because of the off-campus nature of the game.
Come on down to the field, guys. No, none of that.
Well, if it was Texas A&M, it'd be like a golden bar for a ticket.
Well, listen, I think obviously you alluded to it. The way that it's trending, it seems like Kirby Smart is going to get his way. And let's be honest, recently everything is Kirby's got his way. On the field, on the recruiting trail, obviously he's got Georgia as the defending national champs. What's it been like covering this program coming off of that title? And what is this team like maybe in comparison to that 2021 squad?
And what were you thinking when they lost the SEC championship?
I told myself I wouldn't pick Georgia if they were to play Alabama again. Did I end up picking Georgia? Yes. Did I really believe myself? No. I did think, going back to that 2021 season and that SEC championship game, I just felt like when you see these rematches, it's really hard. If you were Alabama, you weren't going to change anything. If you're Georgia, you're going to change everything. And so schematically to prepare for that kind of a game, I feel like Georgia maybe had a little bit of an advantage there. Obviously, the way that it played out with Jamison Williams going down, tough blow for Alabama. And the way that Georgia responded in the second half and really won the game in that fourth quarter, certainly you could sense a big exhale from all of Georgia fans there when Keely Ringo intercepted that pass. And since then, it's really been a topic of conversation of how is this program different now than they were a year ago with a national championship trophy in their hand now. I think that it was a big conversation during the offseason. How is that going to change Kirby's approach? Is that going to change the players? Maybe the way that they approach this season, because last year did feel like if they didn't win it last year, I don't know when they were going to win it, because they had, a generational defense, a veteran group. It felt like all the pieces were there. Everybody came back. I mean, from Zamir White, James Cook, JT Daniels, who obviously didn't end up being a huge factor in it. But, guys decided to come back, wanted to be a part of it, and they ultimately, come away with a ring on their finger. But I think since then, you haven't seen Georgia get complacent. It's the reason that they're number one in the country in both polls. Top 5 scoring defense, a very strong offense again. You're seeing a group that, especially early in the season, I felt like they played without any weight on their shoulders. They knew that they were kind of playing with house money. Georgia had won the national championship. No longer are we talking about, oh, well, it's been X amount of years since Georgia won a championship, because they've got the championship to show for it. So I felt like they were playing free. They were playing a little bit, like I said, with house money there.
Beat the brakes off of Oregon.
Yeah, they killed Oregon.
And absolutely. I mean, you saw it against Oregon in that opener. South Carolina in the third week of the season. Injuries have derailed it a little bit, but I think that this team is starting to get healthy again, and they're going to try and, they're going to do everything that they can to make a push to win another one, and be in very, very rarefied air there with, very few teams having done that. I think that they've got just as good of a chance as anybody to do it.
I think all of our listeners just turned it off.
Just
at the thought,
we lost the audience.
Just at the thought of Georgia going back to back.
Well, we did see, like you mentioned, there's been some hiccups, and we saw Missouri give this team a game, and I'm sure for a lot of
more than a game.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm sure for a lot of staffs around the country, or should I say around the league, the Tigers kind of maybe gave somewhat of a blueprint on how to play Georgia. What went wrong in that game? What did Missouri do right, I guess, from your standpoint, and how much do you feel like that could potentially be replicated by Florida in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, it all started with that Missouri front seven.
Really?
They were incredibly, they created havoc at the line of scrimmage. They gave Georgia's offensive line trouble there for,
you don't hear that much.
Yeah, I mean, they really gave them trouble there for 3 quarters. And I think that ultimately you saw in the fourth quarter, maybe the wear down of the Bama Boa Saban strangle, whatever you want to call it. Georgia did that. They kind of had that effect on Missouri there, and wore the Tigers down into the fourth quarter, where they were able to run the ball. They really found their run game then, and have carried that into Auburn the next week, ran for a season high. Vanderbilt, they had a pretty strong rushing attack as well on top of refining their passing attack. So, to me, I think that if you can make Stetson Bennett uncomfortable, and it's really been a recipe that throughout his career, if you can make him uncomfortable, you've got a good chance, and that all starts in that front seven. Starts with creating some havoc on the offensive on the line of scrimmage. If Georgia can't run the ball and they've got to throw it, like that they did there against Missouri, and ultimately they were able to find it in the second half. But first half, like I said, that front seven of Missouri's created, made it a really, really, really long night for Stetson and that Georgia offense, the rushing attack, the offensive line, everybody that was involved wearing red and black.
Do you think that's the way to scheme for Georgia? Is if we're going to lose this game, it's going to be because Stetson Bennett threw the ball. We'll sell out to stop the run.
I do. And especially if you're going up against a Georgia that doesn't have an AD Mitchell, at least until he proves that he's healthy enough, to be an impact player, even if he is dressed out and playing, force Stetson to throw the ball. Obviously when he's got 2 behemoths of tight ends,
that's going to be a problem.
Gives him an out there. And it gives him a nice safety valve, that maybe probably shouldn't even be a safety valve, probably should just be his number one option there.
That's like Kyle Pitts. It's not like a safety valve, safety net. It's like, hey, how do we get him the ball?
Yeah,
you just
should be forcing. It really is. And I think Brock Bowers is that kind of a player. Darnell Washington alongside him, just absolute freak of nature at 6'7", 275. And I described it this way, for y'all this week in the Q&A, the Know Your Foe. Brock is the kind of guy that can beat you by running by you. Darnell will run over you. And both of those are scary for defenses. So, I do think that if you can force Stetson to throw it away from those tight ends and get it to, an A.D. Mitchell that's coming back off of injury, Arian Smith that hasn't been able to stay healthy in his career, Dominic Blaylock that maybe struggles with separation and has struggled to stay healthy throughout his career, Lad McConkey that has had some trouble here, Kyrus Jackson that isn't, a huge threat. If you can force him to get it to those guys and not to the tight ends, that is a great way to put some pressure on Georgia.
And that's the key question for Florida is who the heck are they going to have guarding those tight ends?
Well, it's on tape, and Kirby has seen that Florida can't cover a tight end. So I don't know why you would force it to those other receivers if Florida hasn't covered a tight end, worse tight ends than Bowers. Yeah.
I mean, the Utah tight end was pretty good, but it hasn't just been that game.
Right, but he also torched Florida for 100 and a touchdown.
He did.
Well, and we talked about this on our show last night is when it feels like Florida knows that they struggle covering the tight end. Everyone knows that. So when you go up and you play two tight ends like this, they're going to do something different to do whatever they can to slow down, to stop those tight ends, which to me then opens things up for some of those other guys to make plays. And again, like I said, that may not be, the worst strategy, forcing Stetson A to throw the ball and B to throw the ball away from those tight ends. That may be a strategy that makes this comfortable or competitive.
Now, obviously, a lot of eyes will be on that matchup with Florida's defense against Stetson, but same thing for the other side of the ball as you got this Georgia defense going up against Anthony Richardson, which gave him fits last season in his first career start.
That was a setup.
What's that?
That was a setup.
Yeah. I mean, that was Dan Mullins. I told you so.
Thrown to
Gator
Wolves.
Nation.
Thrown to the Wolves.
What do you feel like it's going to be like for Anthony coming into this matchup, going against this defense? How much different is the personnel? Not so much schematically, but in terms of what they can do to challenge him and make things difficult, especially for what he likes to do as a QB.
And do they maybe have a player that they could spy?
Yeah, because that to me, I feel like Kirby. We talked about Missouri, what they did. I think Kirby last season kind of put out the blueprint for how to defend Anthony, and we saw Kentucky do something very similar this season.
Yeah, I mean, how is this defense different? They don't have 8 NFL, draft picks on this defense. They don't
that makes a difference.
It does make a difference. Like you said, schematically, they're not all that different. They're trying to do a lot of the same things with still incredibly talented players, just a lot younger of a group. A lot less experienced of a group. In terms of who they have that they could spy with, I think it's huge that Georgia is getting Smile Munden back this week. He is an incredibly athletic player. Kirby called him, the most athletic linebacker he's worked with, which says a lot considering you think back to some of those guys that he worked with at Alabama, worked with a Roquan Smith at Georgia, a Butkus Award winner in him. Butkus Award winner last year in Nakobe Dean. He's worked with some really strong linebackers, and to call Smile the most athletic player that he's the most athletic linebacker that he's worked with, to me, I think that he is the perfect spy guy. And he would be, hasn't played in the last 2 games for Georgia, was banged up against Missouri, coming back off of an injury. Kirby has said that he has gotten all of his reps this week, has looked really good. They feel really good about where he's at. I think that as Georgia's 3rd leading tackler on this defense, he is really somebody that you're going to rely on if you're Georgia trying to defend against Anthony Richardson, because of the threat that he offers, the threat that he gives them to run the ball. And it's not just design stuff; it's quarterback scrambled stuff too. But I think that if there's a defense that has prepared for that pretty well this year, Georgia has played Bo Nix. Georgia has played Robbie Ashford. They've played very mobile quarterbacks. They've played guys, and honestly, it's been teams that have gotten the ball out quickly too. So Georgia hasn't been able to maybe take down the quarterback. They've only got 7 sacks on the season. Last year they had 7 sacks in the first game. So I think that this defense is still very strong, very good, very talented. One of the best in the country. I think that they've got the personnel that can spy on Anthony Richardson. But anytime you've got a quarterback like that, he can give defenses trouble.
And it sounds like Anthony won't be shell shocked in this game like he was last year against that Georgia defense. Like you said, that was generational. Heading into this matchup, obviously Georgia is huge favorites. 22-point plus, I think, at this stage. What are the concerns in your mind for Florida or for Georgia, in this game? Is it not only from what Florida can do in their strengths, but is there any sense of looking ahead to Tennessee, or feeling like they're heavy favorites in this game that might come into play?
Yeah, I mean, among the fan base, there's certainly been a lot of look ahead to Tennessee. The win over Alabama, the bye week, it just created a perfect combination of looking ahead to Tennessee. And the expectation that right now we've got a 1 versus 3 matchup. I would not be surprised when the College Football Playoff Bowl comes out next week if both Georgia and Tennessee take care of business this week. We could be looking at a 1-2 matchup with maybe even Tennessee being the 1. Would not surprise me one bit, considering the wins that they've got. The Alabama win being probably the most impressive of anybody in the country this year. A win over a ranked Kentucky team if they take care of business this week. A win over a LSU team that'll be ranked. Shouldn't be ranked, but going on the road to beat them, I would put Tennessee at 1 in that College Football Playoff Bowl if I was predicting it, and I would probably put Georgia at 2, assuming that they take care of business this week. So I do think that among the fan base there has been a lot of look ahead, and even in the media, there's been a lot of look ahead to that Georgia-Tennessee game next weekend. But I think that when you talk about this coaching staff, this team, this is a rivalry that means a lot to them. Kirby, having played it, growing up in South Georgia and Bainbridge, having played in it as a player and not had a ton of success in it as a player, he's certainly enjoying the success that he's having as a coach in the rivalry. Listen to his halftime speech last year. He does not like Florida. You want to extend it to some of these assistants. Well, a lot of them played at Georgia. A lot of them went to Georgia. One of them coached at Florida. I don't know who there. I don't know
who enjoys beating Florida more, Kirby or Will.
I don't know either. I mean, you could make a case for both, certainly. So I think that this coaching staff won't allow this team to look ahead to Tennessee. I think that the bye week was a good opportunity to, like they do in every bye week, prepare for some of the unique things that some of these opponents down the road do, but then to turn the page to Florida late in that week, Thursday, Friday of that week, and say, hey, we've got this ahead of us. We talked about that this week, but that's behind us now. We got to focus on this before we can get to that. To me, I think that Georgia is going to be ready to go for this game. Talking to some of the players this week, it didn't sit well that they let up 7 points last season. The defense was disappointed by that. The offense didn't have its best day. Stetson hasn't had his best days against Florida. I think that there is a big chip on their shoulder coming into this one.
Didn't like that touchdown,
That's
Nick.
crazy. A chip on the 9-game winning streak, #1 defending national champions. Chip on your shoulder because they gave up 7 points.
Now you mentioned this, and we'll kind of wrap up on this. No, Palmer. You know, there's some history there now with the new head coach at Florida and Kirby, and this rivalry got a little spicy, I think, between Dan and Kirby. Obviously, the Gators had the big win in 2020, and we're able to go to Atlanta, and then you come back that next year, and Kirby gets the win and kind of sends a post-game shot at Dan about recruiting. Obviously, we know what George has done on the trail, and now Billy's coming in with a staff that's much more invested in recruiting. Took one of Kirby's obviously top staffers and Katie Turner, and putting together a really impressive 2023 class in Billy's first full recruiting cycle. What do you think about their history together at Alabama, some of the familiarity with each other's staff members, and just how that's going to contribute to this rivalry on and off the field in the coming years?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that there's a lot of respect between those two. You hear what Kirby said about Billy and what Billy said about Kirby this week. You get the sense that they are both appreciative. Billy, especially for Kirby, appreciative of the opportunity that he was given at Alabama, and that Kirby understands the kind of coach that Billy is, and certainly where he comes from. So and I do think that there's a lot of respect between these two. But, like I said, I don't know that there's a lot of love for Kirby towards Florida. And the school, the team, the program. I think that some of his hatred towards them certainly comes from his not so successful playing career.
Blame it on Steve Spurrier.
Yep. So I do think that as with as much respect as these coaches have for each other, they're going to keep it civil, outside the lines. But when their teams get between the lines, there's nothing more that Kirby wants than an absolute beatdown.
Because I think for Dan, it got to the point, especially because of his recruiting rhetoric, that Kirby just wanted to beat him. I think just to send a message. And there was just, I think probably just some disgust from his point. I think with Billy, it's going to be more of this like friendly competition. These two guys are on the same staff together. They know each other's tendencies.
Respect is
respect. The respect will be there, but it's almost like I want to beat this guy that I was in the trenches with. Absolutely there.
Like you said, I think that Kirby wanted to, send a message to not only, Florida, but also the country of, hey, we are going to play this way. We're going to, build our program this way. And a big emphasis is going to be on recruiting. And if you're not going to do that, then here's what's going to happen. I absolutely think that was some of the way that I don't think that
and I think Billy gets that message, obviously, because he's cut from the same cloth in terms of the Saban coaching tree.
Right. And I also don't think that 2020 loss sat well with Kirby. Just those guys that season, a lot of the build up of Florida and Dan Mullen after that season. I definitely think that there was, coming into that game, there was a lot of, not necessarily bad blood, but those two guys also knew each other and had competed against each other in the SEC West when Mullen was when Mullen was the head coach at Mississippi State and Kirby was the defensive coordinator at Alabama.
Yeah.
Those two certainly crossed paths a lot, and I think that there were a lot of meetings between the two of them where maybe Kirby, and his defense put it on Dan, and it didn't sit well to have that 2020 game go the way that it did. So, like you said, I think that there's a lot of respect between these two current coaches. Maybe that there wasn't between Kirby and Dan.
Yeah, for sure. Well, definitely looking forward to this matchup. I think it's an interesting dynamic. These two guys being in the foxhole together. Obviously, the Gators are looking to play spoiler on Saturday. We'll see what these teams have coming out of the bye week. Look forward to seeing you in Jacksonville, my friend, and enjoying the world's largest outdoor cocktail party for as much longer as we can.
It's always going to be the world's largest.
Hey, I told Nick we could. These two schools can't agree on much. Whether it's the name, the how many times they've played, but one thing I think everybody involved can agree with is that should be the name.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's to the people, it will always be referred to as that. So we're glad that we got to bring you to the people. We appreciate it, Palmer, all the perspective on UGA. Safe travels, and we'll see you on Saturday, bud.
Sounds good, guys. Look forward to seeing y'all down there.
Absolutely. We're going to jump to this final break. We'll come back on the other side, give you our predictions for Saturday as we wrap up the Gators Online podcast.
Football is back. There isn't a better way to enjoy watching your favorite team than by playing daily fantasy sports with our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the simplest form of real money daily fantasy sports and pits you against the numbers. Whether you're a fantasy sports nut or a casual fan looking to add some excitement to the games, Prize Picks is the perfect game for you. It's the best way to have action on the game in states like Alabama, Florida, Texas, Georgia, Kentucky, and over 70% of the United States. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. You simply select 2 to 5 players and predict if they will go more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. Download the Prize Picks app or visit prizepicks.com and sign in using the code GATORS to get an instant 100% bonus up to $100 on your first deposit. So if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100 back. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. That's free money. Don't forget that Prize Picks app or prizepicks.com and the code GATORS to claim your bonus today and take your viewing of your team to the next level this season.
Welcome back into the Gators Online Podcast. Appreciate Palmer for joining us in the last segment. Now, heading into this rivalry game, if you follow the Vegas odds, like you said, Nick, they don't build those palaces.
The men and women who make lines don't build palaces in the desert for being wrong. They know what they're doing.
And they put a very, very steep line on this game as the Gators come in as 22-point underdogs. And, obviously coming off of last year's 34-7 loss, you're facing the defending national champions. You're coming off your latest loss in the SEC. This team's got it rolling. Not a lot to like about the Gators in this game, but it's still a rivalry. You still show up because you never know what's going to happen. I don't think anybody had Kelvin Taylor and Matt Jones going for 200 plus and the bingo card.
How many times
on
did
that
they
night
actually throw the ball that game? Like 6?
It was not a lot. It was not. That was
a wild game. Muschamp walks into the presser, takes the monkey off his back.
Yes. There's been some wild moments, and look, could Georgia come in and get control of this thing early and win comfortably? Absolutely. I think that Florida has the capability, if they shore things up defensively, which is certainly up in the air. But if they do, and they get a Knoxville type of performance from Anthony Richardson, I think they can be competitive at least. And that's obviously what you're looking for.
You're going to have to get Utah, Tennessee, AR.
Yep.
You're going to have to not turn the ball over.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have to, for the first time this season, get off the field on third down. And I have no confidence in the defense on third down currently. Nothing I've seen would make me feel like, oh, yeah, they figured it out in the bye week.
And on that note, I saw a tweet this week from Max Olson of The Athletic, who pointed out there's 11 offenses in college football that are scoring on 50% or more of their drives versus FBS teams this season. Number one on that list, the Georgia Bulldogs, scoring at a score rate of 64.2%. So you're trying to get off the field on third down. That's going to be very, very key against this team.
They're also the number one third down offense in the SEC.
So if you're not catching our drift, it's not a good matchup for Florida.
I think Georgia's weakness, which isn't a weakness, would be their secondary, but it's not like Tennessee bad. So I don't think Florida's going to go out and try to throw like they did against Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a recipe for success. The recipe for success might be the offensive line not playing well because of Georgia's defense, and then Anthony scrambling, freestyling, playing backyard football, because that's Kirby Smart said it. And I think Anthony has been better when plays break down and he makes something happen, more so than on designed runs.
And he also said too that, exactly that last year there was so much design runs from him.
Yeah.
It was so quarterback run driven with what the previous staff was trying to do with him, that now obviously he's added the full range to his game as the starter. And as Nick said, maybe do we see the Gators try to challenge them some through the air? We'll find out. I think defensively though, we led with my conspiracy theories to start this show, but
there's a problem this week.
To me, regardless of the result, right? Regardless of the result, I think they need to, from this point on, for the rest of the season, starting Saturday, figure out what do we got. Not only what do we got with our starters and not even with the second teamers, full rotation, full youth movement. I don't think they'll go full youth movement in this game, but I do think that rotation is going to switch up. I think you're going to see some more young guys get opportunities defensively. I think they're going to
Kamari, Miguel Mitchell, Devin Moore's still on the injury report.
Devin Moore's not going to play. I think up front you could see them go with some different things on the defensive line. But to me, you need to figure out what your future holds with some of these pieces that they've brought in. And look, I think potentially you could upgrade some spots with these personnel changes and maybe give yourself a better chance in this game as opposed to having more busted coverages or missed assignments.
But that's also going to be difficult because they only have one more home game. So you're going to be limited with your travel roster of who you can take.
Yeah.
Crazy. One more home game this year.
I know, man. The season's flown by, and obviously going into this game, I think that for Florida, all the cards are on the table. You leave it all out, and you try to go win a rivalry game. You try to play spoiler, and I think more than anything, if Florida can come out and show some changes from the bye week, show some defensive things that they didn't reveal on the depth chart, but might show up on Saturday. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is that you don't get beat 34-7, and you show that
Well, the biggest thing is score.
Yeah,
a single point.
Well, and like you said, with the way that the Vegas line is, they're only thinking that Florida's going to get a couple touchdowns in this game.
I think the over-under is 55.5, and they're a 22.5 point dog. So Vegas thinks they're going to score 14-17.
What do you think?
It's so hard because Anthony has the potential. I watched him stiff arm a guy that was behind him on an 80-yard run. So he has the potential to keep them in any game.
Spidey sense
on Saturday. But this is a different beast. This Georgia team.
Not the beast that he saw last season.
But also they might have to keep up with Georgia scoring. The only person that is going to stop Brock Bowers on Saturday is Georgia's offensive coordinator not throwing him the ball.
And as we heard Palmer say, if Florida's front seven can be disruptive enough that you don't give Stetson time.
But he also is shifty, sneaky fast.
Yeah, I'm so interested to see what they do Patrick Toney with the front seven and Sean Spencer. And if there's some different packages that they roll out, some things that they've worked on during the bye week, heard some stuff, Nick. So
you're all in on this conspiracy theory.
I want to see. I'm very, for a staff that's been so willing to play freshmen, that's been so willing to shake up the depth chart, especially on the offensive side. I can only expect that is eventually going to play out defensively. And I think that the bye week in this game is the time to do it. We'll see how much, we'll see how effective it is. Georgia wins.
Georgia, Florida covers, and I'll take the under.
Okay.
Give it 3.
I'm going to take the over.
Okay.
But I also think that Florida covers. I think that they're more competitive. I think I have a feeling that Anthony is going to have one of those games.
Yeah,
and I mean good games.
As soon as you said that, then I had like the picture of LSU where he's like falling back last year, falling back, throws the ball up, intercepted, game's over. Like has a potential tying drive or game-winning drive, and then.
Well, and look, the LSU game was his first game since the season opener where he went without a turnover, and the LSU game was the first time the offense didn't turn the ball over at all in a game. So they're going to have to do that again against Georgia, not have a pick six and a fumble facing your own goal line right before half.
No, if you do that, this game could get ugly.
And that front seven is going to have to do its best Missouri impression and try to frustrate Stetson Bennett. We'll see if any changes happen in the Gators secondary and if they just get better play overall from that entire group.
Tackle. 21 missed tackles against LSU. You should have been tackling all week last week.
Yeah. And from what we heard, they got after it during the bye week. They didn't take it easy. So we'll see how much of a difference it makes on Saturday in Jacksonville. Nick and I will be there. Looking forward to this matchup. Appreciate Palmer once again for joining us this week. And Nick and I will rejoin you guys next Thursday to recap this game and to get ready for College Station. You ready?
First time?
First time, baby.
My second time, but 2020 doesn't count. There were actually, Dan said there were 8 million people in the stands that day.
So it's technically your third time.
No, my second time. I went in 2020. Was my first.
So you didn't even, you don't know what it's like there.
No. They have.
It's like when you went to Ole Miss and didn't experience the Grove.
I don't know why you have to bring that up.
Sorry.
In the press box at A&M, they have, hey, don't worry, the press box is going to shake. It's not going to fall. I'm like, what?
Well, I guess I'll be glad that I'm on the field for that game.
Yeah. That stadium is massive.
Might
not be full.
Yeah, well, I know it's going to be full on Saturday, split in half, orange and blue, red and black. I love it. I hope that even if they add the home and home to this personally, that they keep Jacksonville in the rotation. But that's another time for another discussion. We'll see you guys next week. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Abolverdi.